Let's start with something simple and often overlooked. Children don't learn communication from what we tell them. They learn it from how we talk when things are hard. Every conversation in your home is a rehearsal. Not for today, but for who your child becomes when they speak to the world. If you want to shape a confident communicator, you don't start with rules. You start with example. The first skill is this: model calm communication. When emotions rise, children don't listen to instructions. They study behavior. They watch how you speak when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you're wrong. If your voice tightens, they learn tension. If your tone stays steady, they learn control. Calm is contagious, not because it's taught, but because it's demonstrated. And when a child grows up seeing calm responses, they don't panic under pressure. They pause, they think, they speak with clarity. The second skill is often missed. Listen fully before correcting. Most adults listen to reply. Children need to be listened to in order to learn how to reply. When a child speaks and is interrupted, they learn speed. When they're dismissed, they learn silence. But when they're heard fully, they learn confidence. Listening doesn't mean agreement, it means presence. It means eye contact. It means letting them finish. It means resisting the urge to fix, correct, or lecture immediately. When children feel heard, they don't need to raise their voice. They don't need to exaggerate. They trust that their words matter. And that trust becomes the foundation of how they communicate with others. Now, the third skill, and this one shapes everything: name emotions without judgment. Children feel deeply long before they can explain clearly. When emotions are ignored or criticized, children learn to suppress. When emotions are named calmly, children learn to express. Saying things like, "I see you're frustrated," or "that sounded disappointing," does something powerful. It gives language to inner experience. And language is power. Children who can name emotions don't explode with them, they communicate them. This doesn't make them weak. It makes them articulate. It gives them the ability to speak clearly under stress instead of reacting emotionally. Now, here's something important. These three skills work together. Calm modeling creates safety. Listening builds trust. Emotional language creates clarity. Together, they teach a child something lasting. That communication isn't about winning. It's about understanding. Children raised this way don't fear conversations. They don't avoid conflict. They don't feel the need to dominate or disappear. They speak with respect because they were spoken to with respect. And one day, when they're communicating in rooms you'll never enter, your voice will still be there. Not in the words you told them, but in the way you taught them to speak. That's how future communicators are shaped. Model calm communication before teaching it. Children absorb tone more than advice. Long before children understand explanations, they understand energy. They feel tension in a voice, urgency in movement, and impatience in silence. This is why calm communication must be demonstrated before it can ever be taught. Advice is processed intellectually, but tone is absorbed emotionally. What children experience repeatedly becomes their internal blueprint for how communication works. Children learn through observation far more than instruction. They watch how adults speak when they are stressed, interrupted, or challenged. They notice whether voices rise when things don't go as planned or soften when emotions run high. These moments shape their understanding of how to handle pressure. A calm tone teaches that strong emotions don't require loud reactions. It shows that control is possible even when situations feel uncomfortable. When parents attempt to teach communication through rules alone, the lesson often falls flat. Saying your words or calm down while speaking with frustration sends a mixed message. The child hears the words, but they feel the contradiction. Over time, children trust what they feel more than what they're told. Tone becomes the teacher and advice becomes background noise. Calm communication creates emotional safety. When a child feels safe, their nervous system stays regulated. This allows them to listen, think, and respond instead of reacting impulsively. A calm voice during conflict signals that connection is not at risk. It reassures the child that mistakes, emotions, and disagreements won't lead to rejection. That reassurance is foundational for healthy communication later in life. Children raised in calm communicative environments learn that disagreement doesn't equal danger. They don't associate raised voices with resolution. Instead, they learn that clarity comes from steady expression. This makes them more likely to speak up, ask questions, and express needs without fear. Calm modeling builds confidence not through praise, but through consistency. Tone also shapes how children speak to themselves. The voice they hear most often becomes their inner voice. If that voice is patient and measured, they learn self-soothing. If it is sharp or dismissive, they learn self-criticism. Modeling calm communication is not only about external behavior, it is about shaping the internal dialogue that guides a child long after they leave the room. It's important to recognize that calm communication doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means expressing emotion without losing control. Children benefit from seeing adults acknowledge feelings honestly while maintaining composure. This teaches them that emotions are acceptable, but they don't need to dictate behavior. That distinction is crucial for developing emotional intelligence. In moments of correction, calm tone becomes especially powerful. Discipline delivered calmly feels instructive rather than punitive. The child focuses on the message instead of the emotional intensity. This makes learning possible. When discipline is reactive, children focus on avoiding anger rather than understanding expectations. Modeling calm communication also teaches patience. When adults pause before responding, children learn that thinking comes before speaking. This pause becomes a habit. Over time, children mirror this behavior in their own interactions. They become less impulsive and more deliberate, qualities that serve them in relationships, academics, and leadership. Consistency matters more than perfection. No parent remains calm all the time. What shapes children is the overall pattern, not occasional lapses. Repairing moments of lost composure with calm reflection reinforces the lesson. Apologizing and resetting shows children that calm can be restored, and mistakes don't define communication. Ultimately, children become what they experience repeatedly. Calm communication teaches them that strength doesn't require volume and authority doesn't require fear. When parents model steadiness in their tone, they give children a lifelong tool. Before a child ever learns what to say, they learn how it sounds to be heard. Listen fully before correcting. Feeling heard shapes how they speak later. Children learn how to communicate not only by speaking, but by noticing what happens when they do. The way an adult listens teaches a child whether their words have weight. When a child is allowed to finish a thought without interruption, they experience respect in its most practical form. That experience quietly shapes how they will communicate for the rest of their lives. Listening fully means more than staying silent while a child talks. It means being present without preparing a response, without jumping to conclusions, and without rushing to fix or correct. Children sense when attention is divided. They notice when eyes wander, when answers come too quickly, and when the adult's body language signals impatience. Feeling heard is not about perfection in listening, but about sincerity in presence. When children are interrupted or corrected mid-sentence, they learn to compress their thoughts. They speak faster, skip details, or stop sharing altogether. Over time, this can create communication habits rooted in anxiety rather than clarity. They may grow into adults who over-explain, defend prematurely, or hesitate to speak up. These patterns often trace back to moments when their voice didn't feel welcome. Allowing a child to fully express themselves communicates that their internal experience matters. Even when their words are messy, emotional, or incorrect, listening first honors the process of expression. Correction can come later. What matters initially is that the child feels safe enough to speak honestly. Safety precedes learning. Listening without immediate correction also strengthens trust. When children trust that they won't be shut down or judged instantly, they are more likely to share openly. This openness becomes the foundation for healthy dialogue. It encourages curiosity, self-reflection, and the ability to articulate thoughts clearly. Trust transforms communication from performance into connection. Children who feel heard learn how to listen in return. They model the behavior they experience. When adults show patience and attentiveness, children internalize those qualities. They become better listeners not because they were told to be, but because they know what it feels like to be truly listened to. Empathy grows naturally from that understanding. Correction delivered after listening lands differently. It feels collaborative rather than controlling. The child is more receptive because they don't feel dismissed. They are less defensive and more willing to consider another perspective. Listening first lowers resistance and increases learning. There is also a subtle lesson in restraint. By listening fully, adults demonstrate that not every moment requires immediate authority. This teaches children that dialogue is not about dominance, but exchange. They learn that communication is a shared process, not a competition for control. Listening fully also helps adults understand the root of behavior. Children often struggle to articulate emotions clearly. Their words may sound illogical or exaggerated, but underneath is a feeling seeking recognition. Listening allows that feeling to surface. Once understood, guidance becomes more effective and compassionate. As children grow, the habit of being heard shapes how they advocate for themselves. They learn to express needs respectfully, articulate boundaries, and engage in meaningful conversations. They don't rely on volume or aggression to be noticed. They trust their voice because it has been trusted before. Even in moments of disagreement, listening fully sends a powerful message. It tells the child that disagreement does not threaten connection. This teaches them to engage in difficult conversations without fear. They learn that being heard is not conditional on being right. Over time, these experiences accumulate. They form an internal expectation of how communication should feel. Children who were listened to become adults who listen well and speak with clarity. The simple act of listening fully before correcting becomes a gift that extends far beyond childhood, shaping not just what they say, but how confidently and thoughtfully they say it. Name emotions without judgment. Emotional vocabulary builds confident expression. Children experience emotions long before they have the language to explain them. When feelings arise without words to contain them, they often come out as behavior. Frustration becomes anger. Disappointment becomes withdrawal. Excitement becomes restlessness. Naming emotions gives structure to what would otherwise feel overwhelming. It turns a vague internal storm into something understandable and manageable. When adults label emotions calmly and accurately, they help children make sense of their inner world. Simple statements like, "That sounds frustrating," or "You seem disappointed," do more than acknowledge a feeling. They translate emotion into language. This translation is critical. It teaches children that emotions are not threats to be controlled or avoided, but experiences that can be understood and expressed. Judgment disrupts this process. When emotions are criticized, minimized, or dismissed, children learn to hide rather than express. Statements such as "You're overreacting" or "There's nothing to be upset about" invalidate the experience even if the intention is to comfort. Over time, this can create confusion. Children begin to doubt their feelings or feel ashamed of them. That doubt shows up later as hesitation, emotional shutdown, or explosive expression. Naming emotions without judgment communicates acceptance. It tells children that what they feel is allowed, even if certain behaviors are not. This distinction is essential. Children who understand that feelings are acceptable, but actions have boundaries, develop emotional regulation. They learn that they don't need to suppress emotions to stay connected, nor do they need to act them out to be seen. Emotional vocabulary expands a child's ability to communicate. Instead of saying, "I'm mad," they learn to say, "I'm frustrated," "I'm disappointed," or "I feel left out." Each word adds precision. Precision reduces intensity. When children can name what they feel, they don't need to express it through extremes. Language becomes a tool for clarity rather than a weapon for release. This process also builds confidence. Children who can articulate their emotions feel more in control of them. They are better equipped to ask for help, set boundaries, and navigate social situations. They don't rely on guesswork or assumption. They can explain themselves. That ability strengthens their sense of agency and self-respect. Naming emotions also teaches empathy. When children hear emotions labeled accurately, they begin to recognize them in others. This awareness fosters understanding and compassion. They learn that everyone has internal experiences that deserve respect. Communication becomes less reactive and more relational. It's important that emotion naming remains neutral. Tone matters as much as words. A calm, steady delivery reinforces safety. It signals that emotions are normal parts of life, not emergencies. This calmness helps children stay regulated and open rather than defensive. As children grow, emotional vocabulary becomes the foundation for difficult conversations. Adolescents who can name emotions are more likely to talk openly about stress, fear, or disappointment. They are less likely to withdraw or act out. The habit of naming emotions early creates a pathway for honest communication later. Adults benefit as well. When parents and caregivers practice naming emotions, they become more attuned to their own internal states. This self-awareness improves communication across relationships. It models emotional intelligence in action. Over time, children internalize the language they hear. It becomes their inner dialogue. When that dialogue is respectful and accurate, it supports mental well-being. They learn to interpret emotions as information rather than threats. Naming emotions without judgment doesn't solve every problem, but it creates a foundation where problems can be discussed instead of avoided. It equips children with words that match their experiences. Those words give shape to thoughts, and thoughts give direction to behavior. By giving children a language for what they feel, you give them the confidence to express who they are. Respond, don't react. Children mirror emotional regulation. Children learn how to manage emotions not through lectures, but through observation. They watch how adults handle frustration, disappointment, and conflict. In those moments, they are not listening for advice, they are absorbing patterns. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Response is intentional and measured. The difference between the two becomes the blueprint children follow when they face their own emotional challenges. When adults react, emotions take the lead. Voices rise, movements become sharp, and words come out faster than thought. Children notice this instantly. Even if the reaction passes quickly, the impression remains. It teaches that strong emotions override control. Responding, on the other hand, shows that feelings can exist without dictating behavior. That lesson is subtle, but it is powerful. Emotional regulation begins in the nervous system. When adults pause before speaking, take a breath, or soften their tone, they are regulating themselves. Children sense this shift. Their own nervous systems respond in kind. A calm adult can bring a dysregulated child back to balance simply through presence. This is why responding matters more than reacting. It creates stability in moments that would otherwise feel overwhelming. Children who grow up around frequent emotional reactions often learn to stay on alert. They become sensitive to mood changes and may adapt by becoming quiet, overly compliant, or reactive themselves. In contrast, children who witness consistent emotional regulation feel safer. Safety allows them to explore, express, and communicate openly. Responding instead of reacting preserves that sense of security. Responding requires awareness. It means noticing your own emotional state before engaging with the child. This awareness doesn't suppress emotion, it acknowledges it. Saying less, slowing down, and choosing words carefully communicates that emotions are manageable. Children mirror this process over time. They learn to pause, identify what they feel, and act with intention. In moments of misbehavior, reaction often escalates the situation. It turns correction into conflict. Responding keeps the focus on guidance rather than punishment. A calm response helps children hear the message instead of bracing against the emotion behind it. Learning happens in regulated states, not chaotic ones. Children also learn self-compassion through emotional regulation. When adults respond calmly to mistakes, children learn that errors don't threaten connection. They don't need to hide or lie to avoid emotional backlash. This builds honesty and accountability. Emotional regulation teaches that mistakes are opportunities for learning, not triggers for fear. Modeling response over reaction also shapes how children handle peer interactions. They learn to manage conflict without aggression or withdrawal. They understand that emotions don't need to be suppressed or exploded. This skill becomes essential in school, friendships, and later professional environments. Responding consistently builds trust. Children trust adults who are predictable in their emotional behavior. This trust encourages communication. Children are more likely to share concerns and ask questions when they know the response will be thoughtful rather than impulsive. No adult responds perfectly all the time. What matters is the overall pattern. Repairing moments of reaction by acknowledging them and resetting teaches an additional lesson. It shows children that regulation is a skill, not a trait. It can be practiced and improved. Over time, children internalize what they observe. They develop their own capacity for emotional regulation based on what they experienced. Responding instead of reacting teaches them that emotions are signals, not commands. This understanding equips them to navigate life with resilience and clarity. By choosing response over reaction, adults give children a model of emotional strength that guides them long after childhood ends. Create safety, not silence. Open dialogue beats forced obedience. Many environments appear calm on the surface, yet beneath that calm is fear. Silence is often mistaken for good behavior, especially in children. But silence does not always mean understanding. It often means uncertainty, suppression, or the belief that speaking is risky. True communication does not grow in silence, it grows in safety. Safety is created when children know they can speak without being punished emotionally. This does not mean the absence of rules or consequences. It means the presence of respect. When a child feels safe, they share their thoughts, questions, and mistakes. When they feel unsafe, they hide them. Obedience gained through fear may look effective in the moment, but it weakens communication over time. Forced obedience teaches children to comply, not to think. It trains them to look for external approval rather than internal understanding. In these environments, children learn what to say and when to stay quiet, but they don't learn how to express disagreement, confusion, or emotion. This creates adults who struggle to communicate honestly because they were trained to prioritize silence over clarity. Open dialogue, on the other hand, encourages curiosity. It allows children to ask why, not as a challenge, but as a way to understand. When questions are welcomed rather than shut down, children learn that communication is a tool for learning, not a threat to authority. This strengthens relationships and builds mutual respect. Creating safety means responding to questions with patience. It means allowing children to explain their perspective, even when it differs from yours. Listening does not remove authority, it strengthens it. Authority rooted in understanding is more stable than authority rooted in fear. Children who feel safe speaking are more likely to seek guidance before problems escalate. They talk about confusion, peer pressure, and mistakes because they trust the response they'll receive. Silence delays these conversations until issues become harder to address. Safety brings them forward while there is still time to help. Open dialogue also teaches responsibility. When children can speak honestly, they take ownership of their choices. They don't need to hide or deny mistakes to avoid consequences. They understand that accountability is part of communication, not something to be feared. Safety does not eliminate structure. It provides a foundation for it. Clear expectations paired with open dialogue create balance. Children know what is required of them, but they also know they can speak when something doesn't make sense or feels unfair. This balance builds confidence and trust. Forced obedience may control behavior, but it disconnects understanding. Children may follow rules without learning why they exist. When those external controls disappear, so does the behavior. Open dialogue builds internal regulation. Children make better choices because they understand the reasons behind them. Creating safety also models respect. When adults speak calmly and listen openly, children learn how to do the same. They carry this skill into friendships, school, and later life. They become communicators who can express themselves without fear and listen without defensiveness. Silence often protects authority, but safety builds connection. Connection strengthens influence. When children feel connected, they are more receptive to guidance. They want to cooperate, not because they are afraid, but because they feel understood. Over time, environments built on safety produce confident communicators. These children don't equate silence with goodness or obedience with worth. They understand that their voice matters. Open dialogue allows growth, learning, and mutual respect. When safety replaces silence, communication becomes a shared effort rather than a power struggle, shaping individuals who can speak honestly, listen deeply, and engage thoughtfully with the world around them. Respect teaches respect. How you speak to them becomes their inner voice. Children are constantly absorbing more than what is said out loud. They internalize tone, language, and emotional posture, especially from the voices that surround them most. The way adults speak to children does not disappear once the conversation ends. It settles quietly into memory and becomes the voice children use to interpret themselves and the world. Every repeated phrase, every dismissive comment, and every patient response leaves a trace. Over time, these traces form an inner dialogue. When a child hears respect consistently, that respect turns inward. They learn to speak to themselves with patience, fairness, and understanding. When they hear criticism or sarcasm, those patterns often echo later as self-doubt or harsh self-talk. Respectful communication does not mean avoiding correction. It means delivering guidance in a way that preserves dignity. Children can accept boundaries more easily when they feel valued. When adults speak with calm firmness instead of ridicule or impatience, children learn that mistakes are part of growth, not proof of inadequacy. This distinction shapes confidence. The inner voice is formed early. Long before children can articulate it, they are learning how they are seen. When adults acknowledge effort, listen attentively, and address behavior without attacking character, children internalize a sense of worth. They grow up believing they are capable of learning and improving. That belief supports resilience and healthy communication later in life. Respect also models empathy. When children are spoken to with kindness, they learn how kindness sounds. They carry that sound into their interactions with others. They become more patient listeners and more thoughtful speakers because those qualities feel familiar. Respect becomes a natural default rather than a forced rule. Conversely, when respect is absent, children adapt. They may become defensive, withdrawn, or overly eager to please. These adaptations often stem from the need to protect themselves emotionally. The inner voice that develops in these environments can be critical or anxious, constantly anticipating judgment. This affects how children express themselves and how they receive feedback. How adults speak in moments of frustration matters most. Stress reveals patterns. When adults maintain respect even under pressure, they teach children that emotions don't justify harm. This lesson stays with them. They learn that they can hold others accountable without demeaning them. That skill becomes invaluable in relationships and leadership. Respectful speech also teaches boundaries. When adults address children without shouting or belittling, they show that power does not require domination. Children learn to assert themselves respectfully because they have seen it modeled. Their inner voice becomes one that can say no without guilt and speak up without aggression. The impact of respectful communication extends beyond childhood. The inner voice influences decision-making, confidence, and emotional health. A respectful inner voice supports self-regulation and self-compassion. It allows individuals to face challenges without collapsing into shame or defensiveness. Building this inner voice requires consistency. Occasional kindness cannot undo frequent disrespect. What shapes children is the pattern they experience over time. Repair matters as well. When adults acknowledge mistakes and apologize, they reinforce respect. This shows children that respect includes accountability. Respect is not taught through commands. It is taught through experience. The way you speak becomes the template children use for self-talk and communication with others. When that template is respectful, it equips them with emotional strength and clarity. Children eventually leave the environment that shaped them, but they carry the voices with them. Those voices guide them through uncertainty, failure, and success. By choosing respectful communication, adults give children a gift that lasts long after childhood. How you speak to them today becomes the foundation for how they speak to themselves tomorrow.